Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Good morning. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. It is Tuesday, September 16th, 7 a.m. Eastern. I'm your host, Jon Jeune, at the real Jon J _FF. And it is our Week 3 Fantasy Football Waiver Show. Guys, Week 2, it was another up and down week. We had quite a bit of injuries here, specifically at the quarterback position. So we are already entering a rough patch. I saw, a tweet that from Warren Sharp that said it's only week 2 and we already have Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning, right? So it just kind of speaks to what the situation is, the temperature is of the fantasy world out there. How does that impact the Bengals offense? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. Those are all things that, we'll have to consider as we move forward here. But the Week 3 Fantasy Football Waiver Show, we are here to talk about the guys that you should be targeting on waivers and, who would be from guys that you could use for the now to help you win this week, or guys that maybe are stashes that, might help you later down the line. So we'll get into all of it. But before we do that, just some housekeeping stuff. Just make sure you are commenting, liking, subscribing, whether you're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching live or you are watching the recorded video. Just make sure you are liking and subscribing on the YouTube channel. They're just a very easy, non-expensive, doesn't cost you any money way to support the show. So if you like what I'm doing here, just ask you to go ahead and do that for me. So without further ado, let's jump into the waivers. And like I was talking about before, we've got different quarterback injuries. I mean, Joe Burrow, he's going to have surgery on he's got turf toe, and he's going to be out for he's going to have surgery and going to be out for the next 3 months, it looks like. And even at a 3-month timeline, I think that's a little on the optimistic side, because that's the Bengals would have to make the playoffs or, be a playoff contending team in order for Joe Burrow to really make that comeback here, because we're looking at December, 3 months from now. So, turf toe is not fun, guys. I've never had turf toe, but, I always think about one of my buddies in college, and we played on the football. Yeah, that turf. Oh, okay. Sorry, it's looked like we were buffering a little bit. Anyway, so turf toe seems like this, very non-painful injury. To basically put it how my friend put it, thought it sounded kind of soft until he suffered from turf toe and he realized how incredibly painful it is to tear ligaments in your big toe. Basically makes it, very hard for you to move and to cut and to plant and things like that. So that's what Joe Burrow is dealing with, but to a much more extreme level to the fact that he has to get surgery. So Brock Purdy, he's out. At least when it was originally reported, it was 2 to 5 weeks. Now it's 1 to 4 weeks. He's dealing with a shoulder injury as well as turf toe, and they said that the turf toe is more the more troublesome injury than the shoulder injury. So we're basically just seeing when he comes back from that injury. In the interim, Mac Jones will continue to be the starter. Justin Fields, he's in concussion protocol. Suffered that concussion late in the game against the Buffalo Bills. That did not impact his fantasy production. I almost wish it did because it made me feel better about my start of the week. But anyway, besides the point, Justin Fields in concussion protocol. That means Tyrod Taylor will be the starter for the Jets as this upcoming game against Tampa Bay. J.J. McCarthy, he's out for week 3 with an ankle sprain. It looks like it's of the high ankle variety, so he'll be out, they say, anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, or 2 to 4 weeks was the timeline that I saw late last night. So Carson Wentz, yes, that Carson Wentz will be starting for the Minnesota Vikings this weekend as they take on the Cincinnati Bengals. And then Jaden Daniels, this is probably, in my mind, this is the biggest one, right? But Jaden Daniels, he suffered a knee sprain in the Thursday night game against the Packers. So he's questionable for week 3. So it's very unfortunate there with Jaden Daniels. So Marcus Mariota is the backup, and he would be the most likely the guy to enter as the starter here. That's all we got for the quarterback injuries. So let's move on talking about quarterbacks, because obviously there's some people out there that need them, right? So let's talk about the top quarterback I'm adding this week, and that's Indianapolis quarterback Daniel Jones, available in 82% of Yahoo leagues. And like I said, I'm buying in here. We talked about him last week. He came out against Denver, had another great week, finished as a top 5 quarterback. At the time that I wrote this, the last Monday night game had not finished. So don't know if that stood true, but we'll go with it. And right now, he's the QB2 on the season behind just Lamar Jackson. He's got to be the top option on the waiver wire, given his legs, having rushed for 3 touchdowns already through 2 games. I was on SiriusXM last night with Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey, 2 of the GOATs, and they asked me, Mike had asked me, am I bought into Daniel Jones? And I'm like, at this point, you have to be, right? I mean, we see this all the time where a guy is performing so well through the early parts of the season, and we just think that it's luck or that it's a fluke. And you know what? I think when it comes to the quarterback position, just take your shot on that guy, right? Like, what do you have to lose? Especially if you didn't draft one early, right? If you don't have the investment that's made in drafting a guy like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes, right? But if you drafted, a Joe Burrow, or you went late and drafted a Justin Fields, or you took your shot on, I don't even know who else people would take their shots on in that range, because it was either Dak Prescott or Justin Fields for me. But anyway, you've taken your shot on a Brock Purdy or a J.J. McCarthy. I know I'm listing guys that are injured now, so you really have no choice. But needless to say, Daniel Jones is in the midst of having a very good quarterback season, and I think we just have to buy into that until he proves to us that it's not going to happen. And I don't think Anthony Richardson's getting his job back anytime soon. So I think that, the culture bought into Daniel Jones. How could you not? They're 2-0 through 2 weeks, and they beat up on a good Denver team last week. I guess they didn't beat up on them, but you know what I mean. They beat a good Denver team last week. I think Daniel Jones is here to stay. Moving on to the next quarterback on this list, I was hoping he would have played better last night before I talked about him here today. But you get what you get what you get, I guess. But let's talk Geno Smith, Las Vegas Raiders quarterback, available in 68% of Yahoo leagues. Had 3 interceptions, which I think definitely hurt his fantasy production for sure. and just couldn't get the offense going. And I think Brock Bowers was not healthy. I mean, I don't even know what his fantasy production was, but Brock Bowers did not. At least the part of the game I was watching, Brock Bowers was not healthy whatsoever. So, but the volume was still there. 43 pass attempts. He's still running the ball himself. Had 5 carries for 20 yards, and gets to and that that Los Angeles Chargers defense is actually pretty good. I mean, when you go back to what they did, what they were able to do last year, when you look at what they've done through 2 games this year, Patrick Mahomes, they're able to stifle him. What they were able to do to Geno Smith in this matchup. So I think we've got a grade on a curve when we're talking about the Chargers defense. So as Geno Smith goes on to take on Washington, I think I feel a little like much better about that matchup. So he's a guy I'm definitely targeting, but I'm still going to stand pat with this next guy, Michael Penix Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. He's available in 60% of Yahoo leagues. He also didn't have a great day going up against Minnesota, and that was one game after falling short 1 yard short of 300-yard passing day, having scored 2 touchdowns. We didn't get much of, if any, of that on Sunday night against Minnesota. So he's got a matchup going up against Carolina, which is a much softer matchup here. So that's one that definitely feel good about. I said on Friday in the matchup show, I think Michael Penix Jr. has a QB1 type season, top 12 at the position, and I still believe that. So, when you look at his offensive ecosystem between, guys like Drake London and Bijan Robinson, and hopefully the connection with Kyle Pitts continues. But I think that Michael Penix Jr. is going to be a very solid fantasy quarterback as we move forward here. Moving on to the next guy on this list, barely even really want to talk about him, but we're going to talk about him. Let's talk about Russell Wilson. Had himself a great fantasy performance, was top 5 at the position this week. I think he might have been 2 or 3 at the position this week. But anyway, 450 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT, in an overtime loss against the Dallas Cowboys. Gets to face Kansas City this week. And that's kind of why I don't really want to talk about him, because I don't really love the Kansas City matchup. And I feel like we did this last year where it was like, oh, Russ is going to play Kansas City. Like, let's go. I think this is more of like a desperation play here with Russ. I don't think you're going to see the 450 passing yards or the 41 pass attempts every week. So, all that being said, he's more of a desperation play for me. Speaking of desperation play, let's talk about Carson Wentz, Minnesota Vikings quarterback Carson Wentz, available in 100% of Yahoo leagues. And the only reason Carson Wentz is even on this list, going up against a Bengals defense that has allowed an average of 17.7 fantasy points to the position over the last 2 weeks. He's playing a quarterback-friendly offense with Kevin O'Connell, and we've seen, plenty of quarterbacks come into this offense and produce from a fantasy perspective. We're talking, obviously we saw, we're watching JJ McCarthy in the midst of it now. He's, struggling a little bit. But anyway, Sam Darnold, came in last year. He played very well. We've seen Kirk Cousins, obviously, he's a veteran quarterback, but he's played well in this system. We've seen Nick Mullins have big games in this system. We've seen Joshua Dobbs do well in this system. There's another quarterback that started games for them, the year between Kirk Cousins was injured to Sam Darnold year. So there's definitely, a thing about this offense being quarterback friendly. And also you get to throw to Justin Jefferson. So, it's pretty good there. So anyway, Carson Wentz, if you are absolutely desperate, you are in a 2 quarterback league, you are in a 16, 20 person league, everybody's got 2 quarterbacks on their roster. I would go get Carson Wentz. Let's move on to the running back position. And at running back, we're going to break it down a little bit differently this week. We're going to talk about the guys that can help you immediately, the guys that have some standalone value while also being in line for a larger workload were an injury to happen to their backfield mate. And then the guys that are purely either a long-term stash or a insurance policy running back. So, yeah, we're gonna go with that format, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But let's start with the top running back. And if you're listening, he might not even be available in your league, but I just got to say it because the injury that happened. But Washington running back Ja'Cory Bill Krosky Merritt, available in 18% of Yahoo leagues, did not have the greatest of impact from a fantasy perspective on Thursday night. But we did see, unfortunately, Austin Eckler get carted off of the field with what looked like an Achilles injury, and I think that's been reported now. So Bill Krosky Merritt, he's going to have some fantasy value here as as he earns more of this workload in this backfield. Especially if Jaden Daniels doesn't play, you might see a little bit more of them leaning on the run game in week 3. But there's been a lot of hype about Bill, and he's purely a running back, right? And what I mean by that is he is not going to be involved in the pass game, at least not right now. I don't think they trust him with that stuff yet. So I don't think you're going to see that. That work was primarily going to a guy in Austin Eckler. And now I feel like it's going to get split, amongst other guys. Like, does Jeremy McNichols get some of that work? Do they trust Chris Rodriguez? Do they sign somebody? Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But Bill Krosky Merritt, I think, will get the early down work, which makes him like an RB3 with some RB2 upside, going forward here. The next running back on the list, let's talk about Quinshon Judkins, available in 38% of Yahoo leagues. He returned this week, only played 25% of the snaps, but had 45% of the running back or the rushing opportunities, the team rushing opportunities. So I would expect both of those numbers to rise as we move forward here. So, Quinshon Judkins, obviously he's got this dark cloud of the, NFL suspension pending over his head. But there is no word that it's happening anytime soon. I mean, that hasn't been reported. So I feel like you just continue to ride it out with him until that happens, especially considering the fact that you probably got him like super cheap. So hopefully you are set at the running back position outside of just Judkins. You're not relying on him. So he's a nice to have, not a need to have kind of thing. But yeah, he would be the second top target, I would think, for me. And then the third target here, and this is actually honestly pretty close between Judkins and this next guy. But this next guy is the New York Giants running back Cam Skattebo, and Skattebo, he had 13 touches for 59 yards and a touchdown in week 2, and he both outsnapped and outrushed Tyrone Tracy in week 2 and was effective in his opportunities. So I think we continue to see that progression from him. I think, I do really like Skattebo's running style. He's very physical, a grinder. He wants to run through you. And he's got some pass game ability as well, right? I think that's something that you could see all over his college film. He's a weapon out of the backfield in terms of his ability to catch the ball and create yards after catch. So I think when you see these guys that are this big, that have the early down ability, but then they also add the ability in the pass game, I think that screams like three down back. So it's like, well, why would I ever take this guy off the field if I can use him in a lot of those situations? Now, that's not to say that he's going to completely take all the work from Tyrone Tracy, but I feel like it just this early in the season, it is trending towards a guy who's going to be involved in the offense more and more as the season progresses. So Scadaboo, I think, has got to be one of these top options. I mean, between him and Judkins, I say it's close. I I feel like Scadaboo has greater competition for opportunities with Tracy, whereas Judkins, his competition is Dylan Sampson, who I think is a solid player and whatnot. But I think that the Browns are very I think the Browns are more invested in Judkins performing well, given the high draft capital. Moving on to the next rookie running back here. Wow, 4 rookies in a row. Let's talk about Jacksonville running back Bashaw Tutin, available in 45% of Yahoo leagues, had 10 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. Only played on 25% of the snaps, but as a rookie in his second game, this is pretty solid production. So he's more of a guy who, and I think we're entering like has some standalone value, a little bit of standalone value, but more of like a stash kind of thing. But Bashaw Tutin has, a little bit of standalone value right now. I don't know if I really trust him off of the bench, but I would put him in a bye week or in a pinch if I had an injury, something like that. Because you're just hoping that because he's was pretty efficient on a low snap count, and you're just hoping that as he continues to get more snaps, that the production increases. So with Tutin, I think that's where you're at, right? Like I think Scadaboo, Judkins, Bill, those 3 guys you can put in your lineup like today, right? You can pick them up off waivers, you can put them in your lineup, you can play them this week, and I think you'll be satisfied with the fantasy output that you get. Where Bashaw Tutin, it's more of like you're hoping, right? Because he doesn't score that touchdown. It's it's not a great day for him. It's a solid day, and it's harder to talk yourself into it if he doesn't score the touchdown because of the 25% of snaps. But now it's like, okay, well, that's what he's capable of. The Jags coaches are seeing it. He's the direct backup behind Travis Etienne with the trade of Tank Bigsby. So I think all of that being said, Bashaw Tutin is very much intriguing to me. And now let's move on to this next guy who's not exciting at all. I will tell you that right now, he's not exciting. You're going to listen to this name and you're going to be like, John, I'm not touching it. There's no reason to. I'm just telling you what it is, okay? Pittsburgh running back Kenneth Gainwell, available in 92% of Yahoo leagues. He had 12 opportunities on Sunday, played 42% of the snaps. Actually, no, these are, sorry, my apologies. These are old notes, but they're still very valid. Actually, no, these are the same. These are right notes. I apologize. He had 10 opportunities. My apologies, guys. 10 opportunities on Sunday. Played about 42% of the snaps. Now, he has had at least 10 touches or at least 10 opportunities each of the last 2 weeks, right? He had 10 this week, he had 11 last week. Now, the fantasy production, not great. 5.3 points in week 1, 6.6 points in week 2. But Caleb Johnson, I think he's a distant third, right? I mean, they don't trust him on passing downs. He's a running back only right now. Made the mistake on the kick return. I think he's a distant third. Kenneth Gainwell is operating as the number 2 back behind Jalen Warren. Kenneth Gainwell is sharing a decent chunk of the work with Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren is obviously outproducing, and I'm Team Warren all day. But if you are in a deeper league, you need a running back. You need somebody to just stick in there and not get a zero. Kenneth Gainwell will do that for you. And there's going to be a week. Could be this week, could be next week, could be 8 weeks from now. He will score a touchdown, right? I'm not saying that we're playing him because of that, but I'm just saying a guy like this getting 10 opportunities at running back should not be available in 92% of Yahoo leagues. And I'm not talking to people in a 10-team league or 8-person league or the shallower leagues. I'm talking to you folks that are in your 12-team leagues that are hurting for a running back. You're in a 14-team league, 16-team league. You need a play. Kenneth Gainwell is got to be picked up in those leagues, right? And so those are the people I'm talking to right now. Look, bye week fill in, injuries, things like that. Kenneth Gainwell will help you. All right. Now I feel gross after that. But anyway, moving on to the next one. Let's talk Trey Benson, Arizona running back Trey Benson, available in 48% of Yahoo leagues. He was solid on Sunday. I thought he was a solid play, and he did beat his expert consensus ranking, but 8 PPR points each of the last 2 weeks, has had 9 opportunities each of the last 2 weeks. So I think he's going to continue to see this work and share this backfield with James Conner. Obviously, we know James Conner's extensive injury history, so Trey Benson has that built into his upside as well. So yeah, he's a guy that we're going to continue. I think he has some standalone value, but we're going to continue to, the upside is really as a stash, right? Because one of the things I failed to mention with this group of guys I'm talking about right now, or some of these guys, is that some of them, and Benson is in that category, he can get to a place where if he just looks like he has more juice than James Conner, if he's playing better than James Conner, it's not unconceivable that he could leapfrog James Conner on the depth chart. So, not saying that's going to happen, but it's possible. Now let's move on to the next running back. Let's talk Cleveland running back Dylan Sampson, available in 39% of Yahoo leagues. Now, Judkins did return, didn't get quite the workload that we saw last week. And I think, again, that was expected, but I think we would have liked to see a bit more work out of him. Again, he's not going to be a priority add, but I also don't think I would rush to drop him either after one game. It's clear that the Browns do like him. So, the 20-touch game of week 1, I don't know if that was a fluke, or was this last game a fluke, right? So I would wait 1 or 2 more weeks just to see how it plays out. So, again, I'm not saying that we need to go rush to pick him up, but if you have him, I wouldn't rush to drop him either. He's one of those guys that if he's available in your league, maybe you sit there at the 1 o'clock games, you go and you add him and you see what happens, you see what the utilization is like. And then if nothing comes of it, you can drop him for somebody else in the 4 o'clock or Monday night game. So moving on to the next running back on the list, let's talk Atlanta running back Tyler Algier, available in 70% of Yahoo leagues. Now, again, I feel like a broken record here, but Algier needs to be rostered and very close to 100% of leagues. I mean, he's the direct backup to probably to a top 3 player in fantasy. Let's just put it that way, right? In Bijan Robinson. So if you own Bijan Robinson, you should definitely roster Tyler Algier. There's no question about it. If Algier scored 15 PPR points last week, right? A lot of that came from, his rushing as well as scoring a rushing touchdown. But that's what Algier's role is, right? He is the number 2 back. He's there to spell Bijan. So he's got some standalone value, but he's also got this built-in tremendous upside where if God forbid Bijan does go down, you're getting like you're not going to get 100% of Bijan, but you're going to get like 70% of Bijan. Just think it's pretty good, right? Bijan scored about 19 PPR points, so 70% of that, it's like 14, 15 points, which is where Tyler Algier was on Sunday. So, yeah, I'm think Tyler Algier 100% needs to be rostered. Moving on to the next guy on this list, let's talk Houston running back Woody Marks. And Marks, available 94% of Yahoo leagues. Damian Pierce was inactive yesterday. He was a healthy scratch, which I think bumped Marks up the depth chart a little bit. And he played, behind Nick Chubb and was spelling him quite a bit. Made a big play in the passing game. So Woody Marks is a guy that I think, I wouldn't be surprised as the season progresses. We see him more involved in the backfield rotation. So again, he's a guy that I think probably right now is just really a stash. I don't see much standalone value from him. Moving on to the next guy, let's talk Tampa Bay running back Rachaad White, available in 64% of Yahoo leagues. Now, it's funny because I wrote his name down before the game really ended yesterday, but Rachaad White had 10 carries, 65 yards, and a touchdown, also added 2 targets, 2 receptions, and 1 yard. So 14.6 PPR points. Again, was able to get the to get in this backfield and share an opportunity with Bucky Irving. And Rachaad White, I mean, let's not forget, this is a guy that just 2 years ago was the RB3, right? So, when I feel like the pendulum's like swung too far in the other direction, right? Where we've got to make sure that a guy like Rachaad White is not sitting around on our waivers, just rotting away, because he proved with 12 opportunities here. He's got some standalone value. It's not going to happen every week. Only had 3 opportunities in week 1, but given the volume and the production that he saw in week 2 and what his role is, and he's the direct backup to Bucky Irving, so God forbid something happened to him, he'd be in line for an immediate workload there. All right, now we're entering purely insurance policies. Let's talk Los Angeles Rams running back Blake Corum, available in 92% of Yahoo leagues. Has played almost 30% of the snaps each of the last 2 weeks. He's the clear number 2 behind Kyren Williams. Again, purely an insurance policy. Scored a touchdown last week, but I think that was more had to do with the score and the situation than it is going to be a weekly occurrence. So with Corum, again, he's a guy that I think you're just stashing in the event that something happens to Kyren. Moving on to the next running back on the list, let's talk New Orleans running back Kendre Miller, 96%. Available 96% of Yahoo leagues. Again, purely an insurance policy to Alvin Kamara. There's not much you're not gonna pick up Kendre Miller and play him. So he's got 5 carries each of the last 2 weeks. Did get a target this past week, so a little bit more involvement there, but. At the end of the day, he's purely just an insurance policy running back, and I don't think he's a priority add. But if you've got an empty spot at the end of your bench, definitely worth the add there. And then the last guy that we'll talk about, and I don't even really know if we want to talk about him, but I'm gonna bring it up because, yeah. New York Jets running back Braylon Allen, available in 29% of Yahoo leagues. That rostership is a little high. He's got no standalone value, at least through 2 weeks. It doesn't seem that he's got any standalone value. I thought that he would be more involved, but he hasn't been. And then, he's purely right now just an insurance policy running back behind Breece Hall. So if an injury does happen to Breece Hall, Braylon Allen will definitely be involved. Probably be even some sort of committee between him and Isaiah Davis. But I think his role is pretty well defined as the direct backup to Breece Hall, who's gonna occasionally punch one in the end zones and get a touchdown. He will, occasionally, get some quality fantasy production. But right now, I mean, I think he's got 7 carries, 8 carries through 2 weeks. There's not much to lean on there for right now. But like I said, insurance policy running back. All right, that's all for the running backs. I feel like that's the longest part of this show every week. But let's move on to the wide receivers, and let's start with Hollywood Brown. Again, we're going to do a similar thing. We've got guys that we can pick up and start like immediately. I think that's really all we have at the wide receiver position is all guys that we could pick up and start immediately. But I guess the difference is some guys have season-long roles. Some guys are going to have roles that are dependent on other people. So Hollywood Brown only had 5 targets in week 2 after having 16 in week 1. But he gets the New York Giants in week 3, who obviously, they gave up a ton of production to Dak Prescott and those receivers there. So I think Hollywood will continue to be involved. Then you've got Quentin Johnston available in 41% of Yahoo leagues. He had another big game yesterday. I know he definitely scored a touchdown. I know he definitely scored almost 16 PPR points. I just don't know what the final stat line really looked like. 3 of 7 targets, 71 yards, and a touchdown. So he was again efficient with his. I guess the 3 of 7 is not very efficient, but the 71 yards and a touchdown, highly efficient. So anyway, the production there was great. So I think you just continue to ride that wave while you can. Let's move on to New York Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, available in 77% of Yahoo leagues. Had himself a day on Sunday, 28 PPR points, also scored 11.5 PPR points in week 1. And he's got a matchup on deck against the Kansas City Chiefs that gave up a ton of production to the Chargers pass catchers in week 1. Wan'Dale Robinson very clearly has a role here. I think he's one of those guys that I don't know why he's undervalued every year from a PPR perspective. But then when the season starts and you realize like, oh yeah, he's going to catch 8 of 9 targets for 68 receiving yards. And sometimes he'll score a touchdown. And it's like, okay, well, in a PPR league, that's actually very good. So Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, needs a little bit more attention right now if you're in a PPR league. Obviously had huge production last past week, 8 for 143 and a touchdown. So that's obviously a great performance by him. So let's move on to this next guy, Denver wide receiver Troy Franklin, available in 97% of Yahoo leagues. Had himself a big game on Sunday as well, 24 PPR points, also scored 8 PPR points in week 1. He's got 15 targets the last 2 weeks. That leads the team. He's played the most snaps he played the most snaps last week amongst Denver wide receivers, while leading the team with a 30% target share. He has familiarity with Denver quarterback Bo Nix going back to their time together at Oregon. And I think we need to be bought in on Troy Franklin and what he's doing right now. So, yeah, he's a guy that I would try to be aggressive with off of waivers if you need help at the wide receiver position. He's I think the last of the guys in this kind of tier where they're starting, full-time role. They are in a good offense. They're getting production. And it's one of those things where it's not a rental. Like Hollywood Brown, that's a rental, right? Troy Franklin is, I think, a season-long play. Let's move on to LA Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen. Had another solid day in week 2 after a solid week 1 performance. Scored 17 PPR points in week 2. What was it? 5 of 7 for 61 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, he just, him and Herbert have this synergy right now. Again, he doesn't play. I don't know what this. Haven't looked at the snap numbers from yesterday, but I know that in week 1 he didn't play a ton of snaps, but he was like uberly productive on his snap count and was very much involved in the offense despite not playing a ton of snaps. So, that being said, he's a guy that I think, as the season goes on, as they play in more like competitive games, you'll see his role increase, right? And those touchdown opportunities increase as well. Now let's talk about this next guy, Alec Iomanner, available 92% of Yahoo leagues. Had 56 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets, which tied with Chigakonkwo and Calvin Ridley for the team lead. Continues to be a trusted option for Cam Ward. So obviously we talked about Iomanner last week. We talked about his 28% target share. We talked about, the team leading snaps, or running, opposite of Calvin Ridley as a starting wide receiver. So Iomanner, he's got a ton of like his physical ability, his presence, like his size, his speed. I think all of that is like super intriguing to me. And then when you pair him with a quarterback that is going to let him hang like Cam Ward, if you saw that throw that he made in the back of the end zone on Sunday, which is like a throw that it's like teach tape for a throw that you're never supposed to make, like throwing across your body. Like, bad things happen when you throw across your body, but not this time. It was a good thing. It was a touchdown. And he also made a ridiculous catch. It was like David Tyree-esque where he like pinned the ball to his helmet. So Iomanner definitely has the trust of Cam Ward right now. And when you have the physical ability that Iomanner has, right? Like I talked about this last week when we brought him up, but if you just like when Iomanner was getting drafted, the only thing they had to play was his 200-yard, 4 touchdown game against Travis Hunter, right? Like the number 2 pick in the draft, Travis Hunter. And I mean, I like his profile quite a bit, but when I saw that, I'm like, I'm kind of bought in here. Like this is like this guy's pretty good, and I like the pairing here with Cam Ward. So I think Iomanner definitely needs to be rostered. The 92% has to come down here in terms of that availability. Moving on to the next wide receiver on the list, let's talk Cleveland wide receiver Cedric Tillman. Had a touchdown on Sunday. I think that touchdown saved his day because I think he only had 22 receiving yards on Sunday. But continues to operate as a number 2 receiver or as a starting receiver opposite Jerry Jeudy. Had 7 targets this week after having 8 targets the week before. So he's going to continue to be involved in this offense. He's going to continue to get these opportunities. I think going forward, he's a guy that, is considered like a wide receiver 3 flex play as we move forward. It's like guys like this between him and Iomanner, like they're probably profile in a very similar way. However, I don't know. There's just something about the younger guy that I gravitate towards. So I want Iomanner on my teams, but Cedric Tillman definitely a solid, second option there. Buffalo wide receiver Keon Coleman, available in 35% of Yahoo leagues. Didn't have the great week 2, had the phenomenal week 1. I'm not ready to just give up on the week 1. I think that whole game was weird for Buffalo. The Jets were non-competitive. Josh Allen he barely threw. He didn't even throw for 150 yards. They didn't need to throw. So I think as the season progresses, we'll see more of the week 1 type games that we saw from Keon Coleman. Next wide receiver on the list, let's talk about Jacksonville wide receiver Dyami Brown, available in 99% of Yahoo leagues. He He had 17 PPR points on Sunday, has back-to-back games with 50 receiving yards. He's technically behind Travis Hunter on the depth chart. Like, technically, yeah, right? Like, when you pull up the depth chart, Travis Hunter's ahead of him. When the Jags offense goes on the field, I haven't watched a Jags game from start to finish this year, but I'm pretty sure when they go on the field, when that first series, right, like Travis Hunter's out there and Diami Brown is not. But with Hunter playing both sides of the ball, Diami Brown is very much a starter in this offense. He played 80% of the snaps last week, played almost 80% of the snaps the week before. Travis Hunter only plays like 60% of the offensive snaps. So Diami Brown's on the field more. So I think he's very playable, right? Like 99% of Yahoo leagues. I mean, we obviously see Brian Thomas is struggling right now. Travis Hunter is playing defense half the time. So, Diami Brown is like a very, very solid option here if you're looking for wide receiver help, specifically in those PPR leagues, those deeper leagues. Moving down the list, let's talk Kansas City wide receiver Tyquan Thornton. Available in 99% of Yahoo leagues. Thornton has been operating as a starter for Kansas City, had 9 targets combined the last 2 weeks. I think he is locked into a starting role until Worthy and or Rashee Rice return for Kansas City. And he's got this matchup against the New York Giants, which I think is a very solid one and one that he can be quite productive in this weekend. So, he's a guy that I'm definitely going to target if I need help at the wide receiver position. Next up, we've got Pittsburgh wide receiver Calvin Austin, available in 79% of Yahoo leagues. Had a down week in week 2, but still playing the second most snaps. Still seeing the targets. So, I think the Seattle defense is a lot better than I think a lot of us wanted to give credit to them for in the first couple weeks of the season. So, with this, next matchup coming up here against New England, I think Calvin Austin has some fantasy value. Moving on to the last wide receiver on this list, and we'll talk Joshua Palmer. Again, not rushing to pick this guy up, but he's attached to Josh Allen. Plays against the Miami Dolphins on Thursday. Has 12 targets the last 2 weeks. Has at least 47 receiving yards the last 2 weeks. So I think he's going to be a guy that is productive in spots here for the Bills. But again, attached to Josh Allen, I think that's something that you like to see. Now, that was the last wide receiver. Let's move on to the tight ends. And let's talk New Orleans tight end Jon Jeune, and 9 targets on Sunday, 5 for 49 and a touchdown, back-to-back games with 15 PPR points. 20 targets the last 2 weeks. That leads all tight ends. Jon Jeune is a thing right now, guys. So let's just jump in. Right, let's just jump in. Available 55% of Yahoo leagues. You need a tight end. Jon Johnson's got to be your guy right now. Kyle Pitts available 28% of Yahoo leagues, almost 19% target share last week, 7 targets. I'm hoping he's finally here. I'm hoping, right? But I honestly think I would go Jon Jeune over. I know what I said last week, guys, so forgive me. I think I would go Jon Jeune over Kyle Pitts. We want that production. We want those targets. Actually, Kyle Pitts only had 5 targets last week. I think those were old notes, guys. I'm sorry. But 5 targets, 4 catches, 37 yards. Next matchup against Carolina. Moving on to Harold Fannin Jr., available in 58% of Yahoo leagues. Now, again, the usage was still very good in week 2, 14 targets in 2 weeks, continuing to go to this well until it goes dry. I mean, he might not get the the 11, 12 targets that we might see from like a Jon Johnson. He's not going to score a touchdown every week. That's not why we're buying into Harold Fannin. We're buying into Harold Fannin because of the usage. We're buying in because of the guaranteed opportunities, right? Like 5 for 5 for 48. That doesn't sound great, but it was tight in one day, right? Without the touchdown. And that's the beauty of it, is that a lot of these tight ends, right, you need a touchdown in order for them to make your day. And Harold Fannin doesn't need a touchdown, and he'll be a tight end. He can like just roll out of bed and be a tight end one without having to score a touchdown, because he's going to get these opportunities. And the pass opportunities that he's getting, right, they're like short area catches, screens, designed opportunities for him to just get the ball in his hands, get some yak, make a play. So those are things that you love. The rushing opportunities, right? What if one day that becomes a rushing touchdown, right? So those are the things you got to think about with Harold Fannin. So that's why I'm kind of locked in to Harold Fannin, because it's just nice, safe, predictable production. Moving on to the next guy on this list, Zach Ertz, available 43% of Yahoo leagues. Had 18 PPR points in week 2. Again, I said this last week. Old, reliable, not the sexiest pick, but he's steady and he's available, and he's attached to Jaden Daniels. Maybe not in week 3, but for majority of the season, he's attached to Jaden Daniels, and we like that. So, Zach Ertz, I know, again, it's not sexy, guys, but it's effective. Next guy on this list, I don't even know if I really want to talk about him, but I'm going to talk about him. Brenton Strange, available 69% of Yahoo leagues. Did definitely flopped as a start of the week for me, guys. Look, matchup was there. I didn't see the game, so I can't even really tell you what happened. But played 90% of the snaps, but he just was out there getting cardio, as the kids would say. So, I think I'm willing to say that this was, not the norm, and that we'll see more and better production. I mean, he had 5 targets, right? There was one more target than the week before. Just only had 3 catches for 17 yards. So I feel like he'll bounce back. But again, I think, that being said, like all the guys I just listed above him, all deserve a look as well. But if you're hurting for a tight end, I really wouldn't mind going Brenton Strange. All right, let's move on to these defenses and special teams. For this week, let's talk. Number one option for me this week is Seattle. They've had very good games back to back against San Francisco and Pittsburgh, and now they get Spencer Rattler at 7-point favorites at home here. So I'm locked in on Seattle this week. Moving on to the next defense, let's talk Indianapolis. They are available in 93% of Yahoo leagues. They are 3.5-point favorites on the road against rookie quarterback Cam Ward. So, you definitely have to like that option as well. I'm going to continue to attack Cam Ward with these tougher defenses until he proves otherwise, or the schedule softens up. But I like these last 2 matchups. I mean, he had the Rams this past week, had Denver the week before that, and I'm going to go with Indy this week. So Tampa Bay, available 93% of Yahoo leagues, 6.5-point favorites at home against the New York Jets. And I don't know. We think Tyrod's going to start, which I honestly don't think is that bad of a thing for the Jets, but 6.5-point favorites at home against a Jets offense that struggled mightily last week. I'm going to lean into Tampa Bay here. Next up, we got Kansas City, available 37% of Yahoo leagues, 5.5-point favorites on the road against the New York Giants. This play didn't work all that well with Dallas last week, but the Kansas City defense is a much better defense than the Dallas defense. So I feel like this one should be a bit of a better play here. And then last but not least, let's talk about Atlanta. They're available in 99% of Yahoo leagues. I think Atlanta is actually a pretty solid defense. Just overall, I think Jeff Ulbrich, he used to coordinate that defense before he left to go to the Jets, and now he's back. I think they've got a lot of good pieces, a lot of athletic pieces on that defense that are going to be able to make plays and force turnovers and get after the quarterback. So I like the defense in a vacuum, but 4.5-point favorites against Carolina, I like that matchup as well. So yeah, I'm gonna buy into Atlanta, especially this week. But y'all, that's all I have for the Week 3 Fantasy Football Waiver Show. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and make sure you are tapped in on Friday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, as we break down the Week 3 Fantasy Football Matchup Show. So make sure you're locked in for that. Also going to give out starts of the week. But if you are looking for more content, more of my content, you can also find me at @therealjonj_FF on Instagram and X. I'm a lot more active on Instagram these days, just with the reels, and easier to put content there. Plus, it's free to put my content there. So if you guys want to, follow me on Instagram, you'll get more content from me, like my Thursday night football picks, starts of the week reels, and just general insights about fantasy. So until next time, y'all, we'll catch y'all later, and have a good one. Peace.